I have heard that the most popular genre of book is memoir. Memoirs are always at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. And I think I know why. When you read a memoir, you are reading all of this distilled wisdom that was hard won by somebody who's recounting all the things that they had to go through in life and how they met the challenge. Often a good memoir also outlines all the mistakes that they made and explains why that was the wrong path. On my Sabbath day last week, I treated myself to go see the new movie West Side Story by Steven Spielberg. Oh boy, it's good. And it got me thinking about the movie that I think of most often when I think of West Side Story, the 1961 version with Rita Moreno as Anita. She is now 90, and she's a wise grandmother. And if you look at her life and her career, and you see her in that movie, I like to be in America, you think, wow, must be nice to be Rita Moreno. But when you read the memoir, you know that there's been lots of hard times, including a time when she thought about killing herself after a terrible breakup. And so when we look at someone's life like that and see that the hardest time she ever went through is now 60 years ago, and she found her way through it, and all is well, we realize that we too can gain some strength for our challenges. Have you ever noticed how many Catholic churches are named St. Mary's? Has anybody ever asked you where you went to church, and when you told them St. Mary's, it didn't clear up the mystery of where you go to church? Because there's so many of them. Is that Hudson Falls? Is that Corinth? Is it OLA? That's another name for Mary. Is Granville? They're everywhere. In fact, in my almost 10 years of priesthood, I've had 3 different assignments. Every single one of them has been to St. Mary's. St. Mary's Oneonta, St. Mary's Cooksaki, St. Mary's Glens Falls. But that's not surprising in a way, because 38 parishes in our diocese are named for Mary. That's about 1/3 of all the parishes that we have. And the reason why we're so devoted to her is because we've read her memoir. We know what she went through. And she's even more interesting than Rita Moreno. And we get to see that today, a little snapshot of her life. When she had just found out that she was pregnant, not by any of her plans, and so she goes to greet her cousin, who is also pregnant. And we get to hear those beautiful words that are part of a prayer that many of us say every day. Blessed are you among women. But that's a pretty remarkable statement when you realize what she's going to have to go through in just a little bit of time. This isn't long before she had to make that donkey ride 9 months pregnant. Blessed are you among women. And then get refused from the inn and have to give birth in a filthy barn. Blessed are you among women. Or how about what was ahead for her 33 years later? What she was going to have to face. Blessed are you among women. But Mary's life is proof of that axiom that we have in faith that says, if life can bring you to it, God will get you through it. We have to believe and know that that's true. Anything that life can throw at us, if we stay close to God, we will find our way through. If life can bring you to it, God can get you through it. And Mary shows that with her superpower, which was her ability to surrender, her ability to accept what was happening. The lesson that Mary shows us, the reason why we're so devoted to her, we've named 1/3 of our churches after her, is to keep trusting. No matter what happens next, you keep trusting. And whatever happens after that, you keep trusting. One of the common ideas that we hear all the time is that we've got to seize life, carpe diem. We've got to grab life by the handles. We've got to steer our destiny. And there's some value and some truth in that. But it ignores the fact that so much of our life is outside of our control. One way to understand our lives is to think of a train. A train always has an engineer up front. And the engineer may start to think that he or she is the one driving the train. But the engineer doesn't direct the train. The rails do. The rails determine where the train is going to go. No engineer can look out the window and see something interesting and say, hey, let's check that out. Hang a left. No train can do that. But that doesn't mean that the engineer has nothing to do. Just sit there. The engineer is responsible for making sure that the train never derails, that it never jumps the track. The engineer adjusts for the conditions, makes sure to take the curves gently, makes sure to know if there's a switch coming and what to do. It is not the engineer who directs the train, but the engineer has an important role. Mary's rails were also laid by God, and she did what we are called to do, to keep the train on the rails, to never let it derail. Mary wasn't the creator of her life. She wasn't the determiner of her life. She was the engineer of her life. There is a saying that fits this train image very well. Because a lot of us, when we're going through a really hard time, it feels like we're going through hell, like we're traveling through the pit of hell. And many of you know what I mean when I say that. It might be a time that you lost your job, or that you lost somebody that you couldn't bear to live without. Someone died that you just could not imagine your life without. Or you had a relationship end. Or you had a divorce. People know what it's like to go through hell. And the lesson of Mary is, whenever you're traveling through hell, don't stop. Don't ever stop. You keep going. That's not a place you want to stop. You have to know that there are stations ahead. And so, when we look at her life, an unplanned pregnancy, and then almost losing her fiance when he didn't believe her for a while. And then later, Jesus, her son, missing in the temple for 3 days. Who could imagine it? And we can't even speak about Good Friday, what that was. She had to keep moving. So this week, we are being invited to consider our lives like a choo-choo train. And when we like where we are traveling, when we are traveling through a nice stretch, which you may be these days, some of us are, you can be grateful for that, knowing that those rails were laid by God. And when we're going through a painful time, when we're going through a difficult time, when it feels like the train is traveling through hell, then we trust the way Mary did. We don't stop the train there. We believe and we know that there are more stations ahead. Rita Moreno's memoir is a page-turner. And so is Mary's. And so is yours. And so is mine. Let us use the lessons that our Mother Mary teaches us to know that whatever happens, if life can bring us to it, God can get us through it.